I recently did a talk at the Old Dominion University. I don't know why I called it the Old Dominion University, because clearly they're not the Old Dominion University. They're just Old Dominion University. Anyway, I digress, as they say. I was asked to come and speak to their students, some local entrepreneurs and business owners, about how to build and develop a kick-ass Kickstarter campaign. And so I talk to the crowd about that and what I did to create a successful campaign and how I leveraged and capitalized that into the announcement of my book, Anomaly. Without further ado, this is the talk of me teaching you how to build and develop a kick-ass campaign on Kickstarter. Bye. Actually, not bye. Just keep listening. Toodles. Oh, why do I keep doing that? All right, into the show.
Who here loves a good bio? Like one person. So I can't stand bios. I've since written another one that's more funny. Because you sit there and you're like, damn. Have you ever heard someone like, that's a short bio? You hear people that are like, yes. You're like, wow, this person is definitely 97 years old. All right. So I appreciate you guys being here today. I have two goals: tell you about how I got a book deal, and then how you can kind of test a market by using crowdfunding. Whether you are releasing a new idea or not, I believe that this is a great way to figure out if you should be doing what you think may or may not work in the world. I'll give you a caveat first. I don't believe that crowdfunding is as amazing as it once was with the viral moments that it used to have. So the good thing about that is the skills that you guys are going to learn today are very valuable in whether or not you do crowdfunding, growing a business, trying to get a job, whatever. And we have a couple of books that we're going to give away for the most amazing audience participation. So if you're shy, you probably won't get a book. And if you're the first person to leave, you also won't get a book. But she's leaving first, Sherry told me. So you guys heard the bio. I've done these amazing things in business. And about 2 years ago, I was reflecting back on my business career, and I was like, I wonder if there's a question that everyone has asked me over the years. And so I take a couple of days and I just think, what could it be? And I realized that it's some form of this question. I want more. I want more money. I want more people to see me. I want to grow my career, my business, and I want to do it quicker, faster, stronger, insert whatever word here. And I was like, that's interesting. I've answered that question a billion different times through talks like this, one-on-one conversations, workshops, online stuff, but never in a book. And I hate writing. So what should I do? I should write a book about it.
Absolutely.
So I did what I think anyone would do is I went online and I went on Google and I started a Google Doc and I titled it Book. And it sat there for about 3 months and I did nothing with it because I hate writing. Anyone here like to write? And everyone else is like me and they can't stand it. So it just sat there and I was like, oh, no. And so you ever have these things in the back of your mind, you're like, I should probably do that. And so it just kept happening. I was like, I should probably do that. I've done everything else. Like, I've done webinars on stuff like this. Like, let's do a book. And then I have this guy on my podcast named Jason Vitug, and he says something that's very, very compelling to me. He said, the word author is a derivative of the word authority. And I was like, huh. So people will take me even more serious if I write 55,000 words and get it in a book. And so I was thinking, okay, let's do this. So next things you have to do is you have to think of a name, kind of an outline of what it would be. And so the good thing is the book I wrote, Anomaly, is based off of this webinar that I had given. And I basically had the outline. I just had to write way more words with it. And a guy on my team at the time was receiving these daily words of the day emails. So he subscribed to this thing, and every day it would give him a different word of the day. And 3 days before, the word was anomaly. He's like, oh, maybe we should do this. I love one word kind of describers of what we do. And so Hatch, one word. We've done events called like execute, one word things. And so Anomaly works. So then you do the next thing is you go to Amazon, you see how many books are on the word anomaly in business and marketing, and you realize for some stupid reason, there isn't any. There's things that use anomaly in like long forms, but not as a single word. It's like, huh. So then we design a very quick cover, put together a landing page, and I send it to a couple of friends to say, hey, like, what do you think? My one friend, Scott McJunkin, says, oh, you should call this guy named David. He has a New York City publishing house, but he happens to live in Newport News. Well, that's interesting. So I send David this email. And it says, this is the real screenshot. Literally the subject line is, hey, David, I've never met this guy in my life, by the way. Can I take you to lunch next week or the week after, or is there a day open for you, Zach? That's it.
I love it.
That's it. Most people are too afraid to even do that. They'll sit there and say, hey, like, I'm hoping this guy will just call me. Look, they're never going to call you. Reach out to the person, right? If this didn't work, I probably would have called. I probably would have done a series of other things, but for some reason, this had worked. What I didn't realize is that his number 2 at the business has been to some of my events in the past. So there was already kind of this in. So I was like, yeah, that's great. His response, absolutely, I have to eat. Really busy in the next few weeks. Here's my calendar, schedule here. Cool, schedule the first day possible, which was probably 14, 17 days later. I was like, wow, I gotta prepare for this. And so remember, it was based, I had 4 things that I wanted to talk to him about. Number 1 was getting him on my podcast. Everyone on all of his authors I wanted to be on my podcast. I wanted to ask him about book tours, so actually traveling around the country and how that was. And hey, by the way, I'm thinking about writing this book. I don't really want to write it, but what do you think? Not going there to get a deal or anything like that, just kind of going out there and picking his brain and providing, hopefully, a lot of value. I've done this webinar a bunch of times. It was, at the time, every Thursday at like 2 o'clock, and like 40 to 50 people every week would watch this webinar. But because I do it every week, it was, you had to add up all those things to get to the number of a big quantity. So I played this little game in my head. I said, I'm gonna go to YouTube, I'm gonna buy some Google ads to get one of these up really high so that it looks like there's a lot more views on this one video. So I basically bought 1,500 views for this one thing where, yes, it had had that in the past, but not on one central video. So all the other ones had 20 to 100 views. I wanted one that looked like it was a little bit better, hoping that he would say, oh, well, let me see what you have. And then I can send him this where it doesn't look like, oh, there's 3 views. So, playing the game a little. So we're at this lunch, and for the first time in my life, I sit there and I let someone talk more than me. If you know me, apparently I talk a lot. And so he's talking for the 45 minutes, and it's really great, and then he asked me a couple questions, and he was asking me, like, hey, like, what are you trying to do? I said, oh, I have this TV show, I built this thing with Hatch, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, well, I'm thinking about writing this book, Anomaly. I'm probably going to do self-publishing. I'm probably going to do a Kickstarter, just because I think that would be a fun way to do it. He's like, oh, that's cool. And then somehow I say something about like an email list that had 7,000 people on it, the TV show that had 25,000 viewers, and he as a publisher is thinking, oh, these are the numbers that we want to hear. Most people that come to us say, hey, we have this network, which is basically fake news, right? They don't have those kind of networks. And so he says, well, if you do this, we'd welcome the opportunity to publish it right there on the spot. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I ignore it. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, come on. So then 10 minutes goes by, and he says it again, and I go, okay, you just met me. This is crazy. Here's my number. Now call me maybe. Like, this doesn't work like this, right? What song is that? Carly Rae Jepsen? Come on, good song. All you young folks don't know what that is.
Oh, I know that.
And he's like, I was like, so how often do you do this? And he goes, well, I've never done it on the spot like this. I said, oh, so I'm an anomaly. And so I spit it out, and he goes, oh yeah, ha ha ha, I guess you are, slugger. And I was like, cool. So he said, when you get home, here are the things I want to see. I want to see the cover. I want to see the webinar that it's based off of, which is the link that I sent. I want to see the description, and I want to see kind of the table of contents. I sent him all 4, and he said, cool, let me send it to the rest of the people on my team, see what we think. And this publisher does about 100 business books a year, so a couple a month, I guess. And he's like, we'd love to do this. Here are the terms. And then you have to read the contract and understand what it says, and we agree to terms. But the key is that I reached out to this guy, and I said, hey, and I did what most people don't do. The easiest thing in the world is to introduce yourself to people. If you want to be successful in this world, don't wait for people to come to you. You have to be proactive. So I tell him I want to do the Kickstarter thing because in the terms, I realized that I don't get paid until 6 months until after the book goes out. So the actual publish date was April 2nd of this year. We agreed to terms in February of the year before. And I won't get paid, I still haven't gotten a check. So I still haven't received a check from them until middle of October, I guess. So next month, I guess. Counting down the days. Woo! Can't wait. Let's go to the Bahamas. That's maybe not the Bahamas. Bermuda.
Okay.
We go to Bermuda. Okay. So when you announce something, I thought it would be a fun way to do it on crowdfunding because it's different. And I wanted to make money knowing that for 24 months, basically, I wasn't going to make any money. So Kickstarter is a way for you to test out an idea, get people onto a platform, and then they take roughly 8 to 11% of what you make. Now, I don't like to follow the rules, but I think there are some processes that you can follow to get a guide as to what you want to put out there. So with Kickstarter, we did some research on books that were similar and realized that the amount that we originally wanted to shoot for, about 15,000, was about 3 times higher than what the average book actually set out. We said, okay, that's interesting. Maybe we shouldn't go for this high, even if we think we can get this amount of money. We should go a little bit lower so that when we do get it, it's funded faster. And so if you look, this is a real spreadsheet that we made. Here's what people's goals was, and then blue is 2 times more than they normally made. But some of them made it, some of them didn't, and the key is just where's that number, right? And so if we would have asked for $50,000, we might not have made that. With Kickstarter, if you don't make your goal, you lose all the money. There are some crowdfunding platforms that will take a higher cut. It's like Indiegogo, you have to pay, 12% plus the money out percentage. But with Kickstarter, we said, this is the biggest one, let's do it here. Let's make sure we get this funded. A little later, I'll tell you guys about Easter eggs that we put in it, but we like to put in numbers that were very odd, that were prime numbers. So I think the number that we went after was $7,531 because it was a weird number. I was like, oh, if we just ask for $7,500, it's just $7,500. Let's ask for a weird number. So, and if you guys have questions throughout, please ask. So quickly by the numbers, the network that we have, several thousand people on social, a TV show of 25,000 people weekly, and an email list of 7,000 people. On Kickstarter, we only got 124 backers. It is really hard to get someone's wallet out. So if you can't get that money out, something's the matter. Your idea sucks, you're bad at marketing, all of the above, something else, right? So you have to try and get it out of people. So I'm going to show you guys quickly what some of this looked like from the process standpoint. So the more thorough of a page, the more likely they are to receive money because people want to read what they're getting out of it. If you just do a bad job of that, people aren't going to buy as much, is typically what it looks like. So we did a video. I think a video is extremely important. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But basically, this is what you're getting. This is what an old book cover looked like. Here's a little bit about what you would get. And then kind of appealing numbers and things like this. Table of contents that changed. All this stuff. Here's testimonials of people that have been in the book, that we talked about in the book. Basically, all just improving credibility for people that might not know of this or my brand beforehand. Which is interesting because I believe the number is 93% of the money raised was from people that were directly in my network. So the first comment I made was that Kickstarter, before you might have been able to get that viral moment where you get all this money towards things that you've never heard of that brand. In my case, only 7% of that actually was the case. So if I don't have a network that's giving me a little bit of money, I don't fund this. So make sure you have your network first. So things that we gave away, those are important. Those are like the rewards. Basically, people are buying books, right? So you can buy a book. This is interesting. At the beginning of this, I thought the book was going to sell for $31. So we were saying you're basically getting a big discount. We hadn't decided on the price of the book at that time. The book ended up only being $18, so they only saved $1. Oops.
Did they get anything else on that Kickstarter?
On this, so if they bought the book for $17, they just got a copy of the book. Other chances they could get a signed copy. People basically, I mean, I sign all the books anyway, but people were willing to give a little bit more money. This one, so you could get, if you pledged $51, you would get a 10-minute strategy call with me. Normally that would cost a lot more money. You could buy 10 copies. So this one, so like,
No t-shirts or anything?
nothing like that. Yeah. Why? Because things cost money. I think that's where a lot of people in Kickstarter and crowdfunding lose, is they raise all this money and then they actually have to fund the stuff that they're doing. And t-shirts and pens and all that stuff are really expensive. And they don't realize that. Another thing that people don't realize is how expensive shipping is. Right? So for every book that I have to send out to someone, it costs me $2.75. For me to get these books, so I just ordered some more books myself today, it costs me $7 to get a book to my door, and then I have to spend another $3 to get it out to someone else's door. So I'm only at $7 there, and however much money I had to spend to get that money in, you lose money, I think, a lot of times with shipping. If I didn't do media mail, it would probably be another $1 to ship a book out. But United States Postal Service allows you to do this thing called media mail, where you can send out media things for like 30% off, which is great. And by the way, when you go to the post office and you have a bunch of books, everyone in line hates you. Yes. And it's awesome. So we have like this online platform called 1004. You can get access to that with a little bit of discount in a book. Nancy here in the Strom Center bought 15 books, which was, I don't know, $250 or something like that, and a bunch of other stuff as well. Basically, everything was centered around the book, right? Yeah, you get a signature, you get an ebook. But at the end of the day, like, is the t-shirt worth it? Is the hat worth it? I don't know. Do people want to wear like my mug on a t-shirt all the time? As much as I would love that, it hasn't happened yet. You know, I'm not Tom Brady. Soon. Any questions about specifically on that page? We can go back to it later if you want. Okay, so we developed that. We're going to do it on Kickstarter. We developed that. It's I'm not going to get paid for it for 24 months, which is basically why we do this. And so I can get paid in 30 days, write the book. And but by the way, yeah, I hadn't written the book yet. So I meet with him in January, late January. I start writing the book the week after. It took me 5 weeks to write it. And then during that time, we started developing this at the same time. Then for 6 months, it went to the editor and editors. And without them, you will have nothing. You have to have those editors. They're very, very important. Probably the single most important thing with Kickstarter is this thing that I call seeding the tip jar. You guys ever seen someone playing music on campus and they got like the guitar out and they want you to put money in it? You're at the bar and you want or at the coffee shop and there's a thing that says tips. You know it never happens if there's no money in it. Money doesn't get put into it. So you have to like seed the tip jar, if you will. So with crowdfunding, you have to know who's going to, you have to have some like favors called in beforehand so that when it goes live, people will immediately fund you. So you have to like pre-qualify people and say, hey, I'm about to announce this book. I need to know that on this day, between the hours of 9 and 11 a.m., that you're going to fund one of these things. Can I count you in? I'll send you a message at that time saying this is what's going to happen. Because what you don't want to do is have people come to the page and it look like this with nothing on it. Because people look there and they're like, well, this sucks. People follow popular things. One of the most popular TED Talks ever is about a guy on a mountain dancing. And he doesn't, and then eventually the entire crowd starts dancing with this guy. But no one else dances with the guy until everyone else, the second person comes or the third person comes. So you have to seed the tip jar. If you don't seed the tip jar, if you don't get people talking about it, funding it, you can't have everyone else do it because they're like, well, this sucks. And you don't want to be a part of a crappy party. In the introduction to my book, I talk about in college I would throw parties. And when you go to a party and it's terrible, people leave. Right? It's the same concept. You guys don't go into places that look boring or that don't look like they're fun. You want to go to a place that looks like it's going to be entertaining. If you don't entertain, people don't show up. So, we sent out an email at roughly 9 a.m. on, I think, February 21st of 2018. And I think within the first day we had a couple $1,000. I tried going in and finding the exact numbers on the exact date, but Kickstarter didn't give me that. But we sent out this email to our list of 7,500 people, and I had been teasing for a few weeks, hey, something's about to happen, we're about to announce this thing. People were like, oh, what is it? And so no one guessed this, which was great. But we sent this email out, and then about 15 other emails in 31 days trying to get people to give us money. The overwhelming majority of the time when we send emails, we were not asking for money leading up to this. And so you're basically saying, hey, I'm going to provide you all this value beforehand, and then at some point, I'm going to try and sell you something. And so we had, for years, been building up this email list of providing educational things to people about business, and every once in a while sprinkling in, hey, we're going to try and sell you something. And so this was one of the ones. And on top of this, we also had a bunch of people that we've been reaching out to individually saying, hey, this is about to happen. Actually, we had teased, I was at an event where you were at the Portsmouth Partnership, and we didn't announce what it was, but we were like, hey, come here at this day, and we're going to show you what it is. And it was exciting. So there's a bunch of Easter eggs in the book and throughout this whole thing. So all the numbers were prime numbers. There's a movie called 21. Have you guys ever seen this? It's a blackjack movie. So there's a scene in it where this guy, the main character, I forget his name, is trying to get a scholarship to Harvard Med. It's like $400,000 or something like that. And he's meeting with the guy saying, hey, like, here's my resume. And the guy's like, your resume looks like everyone else's. What are you going to do to dazzle me? I was like, oh, dazzle. So then we do this Kickstarter video, and in the video, that's me in a suit. There's a funny story with this. With the dazzle piece, though, if you don't dazzle someone, no one's going to listen, right? No one's going to grasp that attention. And so most people never see me looking like this, which is funny, actually. If you look, I still had the black t-shirt on there. Someone was like, that's weird. And then like 2 seconds later, I I like rip it off like Superman. I'm like, this isn't gonna work. Except I don't rip it off. I just stop. But we go to this gets people's attention in this case because no one ever sees me in this kind of way. And so we did this video, and then I talked about the book, and people could buy it. And I think it had 50,000 total views over everywhere. 19,000 here. I think 15,000 on YouTube, which was cool. I'm not like Kobe Lomax. I can't, get millions of views all the time, talking about my hair. But, I try. I mean, look at this guy's hair. I mean, it's phenomenal, isn't it? Look at it. But again, it's not about that one time, right? It's not about, it's about consistently providing valuable information to people, entertainment over and over and over again. Whether it's social media or something else, I believe that we're constantly needing to entertain people. And I think we have to think of it that way, as entertainment. If you don't entertain people, if you annoy people, guess what's going to happen? They're going to turn the channel, right? And so if you're on social media and you keep flipping the channel basically like you would your TV, that's exactly the same thing. Then you stop, you look at the thing, you look at the goat jumping around or the cat or the baby, and you're like, cool, you engage with it, and then you go to the channel again. Keep flipping, it's the same thing. But people will stop when something is entertaining. So entertain or die, right? So sometimes I have stuff that's valuable and sometimes I don't. I try, just doesn't always work. So for about a year and a half, I was doing a live video every single weekday, trying to promote things around standing out. Not selling the book every day, probably only selling the book for 30 days of that year and a half. But you have to constantly be pushing stuff out because most people don't stop. Just because you push record or send doesn't mean that someone is seeing that and engaging with it. It also doesn't mean that what you're doing is wrong. It just means that it's not getting that person's attention that day. Anyone know what this is? Anyone ever use one of these? So if you're doing Kickstarter, you're starting a business, or in any business, you need to be trying to call in some favors every once in a while. Maybe that person can buy. Maybe they have some sort of network that you can capitalize on. So anyone that had any kind of contact list or something like that, I would reach out and be like, hey, my book's coming out. I need you to promote it. So like the local SBDC has a list. I don't even know how big it is, but they sent this out 3 times to their network and then posted it on their social networks. And again, it's just, you want people to keep seeing this. You want people to see your face, your mug, your brand, your business, your book, whatever, so that hopefully one of those times they will stop, they will look, they will engage, and then they will become your biggest fan. If not, they won't. If you post something once, you will lose, right? The people that you see that post and get millions of engagement, look at all the other stuff that they did beforehand, right? It's building up to that stuff. Did you have a question, Alan? Okay, I thought you did. Any questions?
I've read somewhere that an individual consumer needs to be engaged by media, I think it's 3 times before they'll actually make a purchase. And I think that was over specifically email marketing, but yeah, I just didn't see it in really good.
Yeah, so I think the numbers that I found for my book are it takes 5 to 7, or it takes 6 times for someone to see something for the first time, and then 5 to 7 positive interactions to turn them from a visitor to whatever that conversion is. So that conversion might not even be a sale at that point, right? Think about the girl or guy that you want to go on a date with. Think about getting someone to sign up for an email. There's so many different ways that system works over and over and over again. Then if you pair that with if you know this answer, and you've heard me say it before, don't answer. How many ads do you think you see a day? Throw out some numbers. Unlimited? That's not a number. 23 thousands. 80, 100? What's it? So the last known data point that I can find is in 2013, and the number was 5,000 daily ads. I think that's bull. I think it's double that, right? But 35,000 ads a week. That's what you're competing against. It's you, the one, versus 4,999 other people. That's the close. That's the actual ads that you see. That's all the TV things that you see. The thumbnails on Netflix, the Subway wrappers, everything. They're your 25 stickers on the back of your laptop. Each one of those things. Those are all ads. You're competing against that, right? It's the squirrel effect. What's going to stop me? And so if you don't think about, so many people focus on beating their competitor, like their direct competitor. I think that's also bull. You have to worry about the 5,000 others that you have to compete with, because that's really who you're competing against. If you cannot stand out to get that attention, whew, it's wild.
You go about getting advertisements from bigger corporations without having to pay a large lump sum of money?
Could you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can get anything, but you got to ask.
So do you think they would want, obviously they would want something in return. They wouldn't just want to give it to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing to gauge without knowing a lot of context, but the thing that a lot of people are talking about today is Odell Beckham wore this watch in a football game, right? Somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000 is what this watch cost, and he plays this, or he wore this in a game, right? Who knows if he was paid to do that? None of that has come out yet or anything like that, but that type of influential marketing can be very valuable, right? Now people are talking about this watch company that no one ever heard of before, right? So from a big brand, you're seeing a lot of people. So Nike's latest ad was with a lot of up-and-coming athletes that no one's ever heard of, right? But they're trying to get them on the ground so that when they do become these big athletes, guess who they're going to follow, right? My favorite ad of all time is the Michael Phelps Under Armour ad. If you guys have never seen it, Google it tonight. Go to YouTube. It's 90 seconds long, and it shows him working out. And at the end of it, it's him working out in basically a pool in the dark. And the text on the screen goes, "It's what you do in the dark that puts you in the light." It's the things that you do that no one else sees that really progresses your business, your careers, and stuff like that. Just because someone didn't see a post on social media doesn't mean anything, right? It's what you do that no one else sees, right? So it's the text message to someone, it's the direct message to someone, it's the phone call, it's the being here. And if we're not recording online, only people in this crowd see this. That's it, right? And so what can you do to make sure that those relationships can grow from a one-on-one basis to grow to infinity? Helpful? Yeah. So realistic expectations, I think, are really, really, really important. I've consulted with a number of businesses who say, "Hey, we're going to make $75,000 on this Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign," and I'm like, "That's very unrealistic. I think you should do $2,000." And then they run their campaign, they make $2,100, and they actually don't get to keep that because they went with the wrong platform, they didn't have as big a network as they thought, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to be very realistic with the number that you choose. But then at the same time, I think if you don't fund, and it was a realistic number, there's a couple of things you have to look at. Is my product what someone wants? Did I talk to the right people? Did I just post this and hope that people would do it, right? Most people want to post something once and make $1 billion off of it. It doesn't work that way. And so you have to, did I put in all of the effort that was necessary to do it, right? This is Nasty Nate Scholl. I don't know why he likes that as his nickname, but he does. He's an ODU grad, used to be an assistant coach here. He has one of the most successful Kickstarter campaigns in this market. And he did this by building up a Twitter following of millions of impressions over 4 years. So he's a swim coach, very niche market, and basically said, "Hey, I have this following, all these people are interested in me and the things that I say. Is there a product that I could build out of this? And he realized that in swim teams, they use these analog clocks, or if they use a digital clock, it's really clunky and it's very hard to figure out. You know those remotes that cost like $300 that like you can't figure out? It's like 5 times worse than that for a swim clock. And they cost like $2,500. It's just a couple numbers and it needs to go up and down and that's it. And so he decided that he was going to leverage and capitalize that market that he had created, that network that he had created, to see if he could sell this clock. So in 30 days, he raised 65 grand. And he will tell you that it's because he capitalized on that relationship, seeded the tip jar beforehand, and called in every single favor over and over and over and again. So if someone was, I'm thinking about buying one or not, he would get on the phone with them and convince them to buy 4, not 1. The point of this story is this: you have to be selling over and over and over and over again. It's not to be the annoying salesperson, but when you have that person who you know is the right fit, you need to convince them to buy from you, right? If you just meet someone for the first time and be like, hey, what's your name? Right here. Logan. Hey, Logan, I want you to give me $10,000. You're going to be like, who is this donkey? I'm not going to give him a cent. But if I've been building up a relationship with him, I know that he's the target customer. I know that he's looking for a swim clock. He is also a swim coach at ODU. And I go, hey, man, and you know he has a budget because he's the coach. Hey, I think this is the right fit. See how that story is a lot better than me just going, hey, buy $10,000 worth of my clocks? That's why building those relationships is so important over that longevity. But if you just go up to someone and you're like, hey, buy my thing, you never want to talk to that person again. But if you build that relationship, it can be so much stronger, and I think you can make a lot more money out of it too. But it's a work of art. You have to figure out when is the right time to play that. Oh, Ric Flair, like wrestling fans, big wrestling fans. Sorry. One thing that I think a lot of businesses, brands, people, career, trying to find a job do very poorly is staying on brand. So you will see people who are trying to sell something, or they want to appear that they are an expert in something, and they talk about everything but that subject. So if you were to, let's take Alan for example. If you were to take Alan's LinkedIn, right? Most of this stuff that he is posting, over 75%, is about a skill that he is very strong in, which is voice technology. He's not sitting there saying, I'm a voice technology guy, I can build everything that you need. He's giving you his feedback, his expertise on that subject. TJ Reed is in leadership management, has a podcast about that. He's not selling anything. He's telling you, here's my thoughts, or here's my feedback on this subject matter. And that's basically the only thing that those two individuals talk about. So that when someone's like, who do I know in leadership that can teach me this thing? Hopefully, you've created a relationship with TJ, and you will think of him when that thing happens, right? Or in voice with Alan, or standing out, being the anomaly with me, right? If you start talking about all these random things, people will sit there and be like, well, I don't know which one, so I'm going to go to the next person. And you're sitting there going, well, why didn't it work? Well, it's because you do a bad job of talking about a billion different things, right? So take an inventory of the things that you do when you're posting, talking with people, and make sure that it's somewhat on brand, because you don't want them to call the other person because you did a bad job of staying on brand. Does it make sense? Any Ric Flair fans? One. Oh, do it.
I used to watch wrestling back in the day.
Exactly. There's 2 of us.
2 of us. Okay. Anything with the books? Up to you. Okay. We have 5 books to give away. Any questions? No one? It was either that good or that bad. Who?
So for the book cover and layout and all that stuff, was that done by the publisher? Or how did you guys correlate to come up with what you wanted for book cover?
Okay, so if you, the original design was something like this, still somewhat similar. This was done by a guy named Dave Ritt, and the idea was that the paper airplanes are what most businesses are, and if you want to be different, you have to be the big plane, right? The publisher then comes in and says, hey, we get the concept, but the story isn't sold enough. So we think that you need to tell a better story with it. And so they colored in the paper airplanes. They gave, they just did more with it. I think it's a better cover. It tells a better story. Then on the back, they did this other stuff too, which they didn't do before. And I think the text is the same, but a little bit of both, but inspired, I guess, from that Daybreak guy.
Back to the Kickstarter piece. So you said if you set a goal and you don't make it, you don't get any of the money.
Correct.
Now, so is there an incentive for me just to not always say $1,000 is my goal, and then no matter what, I'm going to collect the money? Or if you way underestimate that, is there a penalty?
Is there a penalty? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So
I don't-
instead of your example, you were talking about they wanted to do 70,000. I think.
Yeah. I think there are certain people that you know don't have networks that are trying to fund their entire endeavor, and you can have conversations with them and figure it out. So like, there's a guy that had a push-up, like a perfect push-up thing, and he thought he could get like 50 grand. I'm like, dude, you might make $500. You don't have the network yet. You need to focus on that. And so he's like, nah, I'll be fine. And then I saw him, this was like 3 years ago, and then I saw him like 3 months ago, and he was like, you were right. I said, it's not about me being right. You were too early to this thing. You didn't understand what you were doing. Is there a penalty? No. But I think that there are times when you know, so like Reading Rainbow was going for $1 million. They raised $3 million. They had that brand. They could call in those favors, that the fans reminiscing of that, right? Pebble the first time, right? They got, I think, like several $1 million. A Pebble made this watch. They're now defunct. But they did it 3 times. The second time, they asked for more money because they knew they had the network of people to do it. If you don't have a network that can give you an overwhelming majority of that money, I don't think you should ask for that kind of money. At the same time, if you're close, so like, had I asked for $10,000 and we only got to the 8,100, I was pulling out my card and I was paying that additional money to make sure that I got it on there. Right? Imagine being at 100 grand and you need 101. I would hope that you would pull out and get that extra $1,000 so that you don't lose that money. Because what will happen is you try and call those 124 people and be like, hey, it didn't work here. We know that it pulled on your credit card, kind of. You need to go in there. Those people aren't going to pay you again. Nope. They're going to think you're a loser. So I went into that knowing that, hey, if we're close, I'm going to pay that additional thing. And then I'm losing 8%, but at least I'm not losing several $1,000s in that case.
But that's the structure of Kickstarter, is that your credit card is not charged until the deal is done. So
Right.
for them, they really lose nothing because they're not doing a lot of work on the front end. You're doing all the work.
Right.
So putting in that extra money.
And so that's another thing too is because our ticket price was low, we didn't have this issue at all, I don't think. But there's a company called MakerMex that does 3D printers. They raised about 80 grand and they had $20,000 in credit card declines because their ticket price was like $1,000 each. So these people that said it, when that date came around 45 days later, it declined because they didn't have the space on that card. The good thing is Kickstarter will allow you to still be funded, because those declines didn't go through, but there's absolutely that delta of money lost. So here they were looking to get 80, they got, let's call it 60. It's a big difference, especially if the number that you were trying to raise, you were only going to profit a little bit off of that. That's where I think you get into the t-shirt game and that stuff, and you can get really screwed really quick. T-shirts aren't cheap, shipping isn't cheap, and you think that people want your t-shirt and pens when it's like, no. Like, we did digital coupons, so that was our t-shirt. And it was like, Zack will send you a Facebook message that says hire, something stupid like that for the people who didn't have enough money, but don't lose money in that. And I didn't know what shipping was on a book at that time because I hadn't gone into it, but like, actually, international on this, we lost money. So every international book that we shipped, I think there was like 10 or 15, it was like $25 of shipping alone. So little things that you don't think about beforehand, you go into it and you're like, whoa. You can't go back and be like, hey, Johnny, hey, Sally, this is a $25 international shipping fee, but we didn't put that on there.
How does it work for Kickstarter as far as a metric? So on their homepage, and I don't know that these people exist, but if people were just to wake up every morning and check out Kickstarter's front page, it's going to show like these trending deals. So how do you get there, and what does that look like?
So in the 30, I think our campaign was 31 days. On day one, we were in our category. We were always the top book in that category, and we never really got into any of their algorithms. Is it because we weren't asking for enough money? Whatever, I don't know. I know that Hamilton, who got on the front page, Hamilton Perkins collection, he had raised, 25,000, something like that? He found someone at Kickstarter, reached out to them, made friends with them, and made that connection, and then they whipped him on that for like a day or so, right? So that helped, or like it was Kickstarter feature or something like that. When Janae did her Kickstarter, I said, you need to call Hamilton, figure out who that person was, and get there, right? Hers is one of those that didn't get funded as well, right? And so it's difficult, right? Kickstarter is a company. They want to make money. They make 10% of what you are doing, right? It's in their best interest to find the things that will make them the most money. And so I don't know how their algorithm works, but if you're doing well or you're doing something that's interesting and you have a relationship with them, you could probably call in that favor. But number two is your project just can't suck. I mean, they're not going to fund something that is at $100 of $100,000. It's not in their best interest.
You said it took you 5 weeks to write the book. What was that learning process?
Okay, so it took me 5 weeks to write the book. It was 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 3 weeks on. I had the outline done. It was based on a webinar that I'd given many times. And so each day I would, there's a tool called Scrivener, which is like a good author tool. It allows you to drag and drop stuff really easily. And SCRIVNER, something like that. And I would write a couple thousand words, and when I felt like I couldn't write anymore, I would stop. And get to it the next day, be like, here's what I gotta talk about. And like, so there are chapters that like I had on the table of contents that I could just never figure out what to write about. So they never made it to the book. I took 2 weeks off, and we were about 35,000 words. I thought I was done. The goal was always to get to about 55, 60, but I thought I was done at that point, and then realized that I wanted to do case studies. And so that was the most difficult thing. And so anytime you see the dotted lines, which is supposed to be reminiscent of the paper airplane with that wrapped around it, those are case studies of people that were written about. That was the hardest part because that wasn't my story, the things that I experienced. That was me having to tell what they did through my memory, and that was very difficult because I didn't want to do them a disservice. So that was probably the most difficult thing. And then you realize, oh, I need more. So then like you call people and be like, be interviewing. I remember I took my wife's car to get to go to like the dealership one day to get service. Like I called a guy, I was like, "You're the chapter I'm missing in this book. I want to write about you." And so like I'm sitting there in a Priority Honda little computer system talking to this guy, taking notes for an hour, and I'm like, "Cool, I'm gonna include you in my book." His name's Alan Branch. That's his story, but it fit well. I knew him. I knew of the stuff that he was doing, and I'd met him before, but I needed some more clarity and stuff, and so that was very difficult. Editing. So there's a series of different editors that I use. There's like friends that I use from like, hey, what do you think about this? Who their goal wasn't necessarily edit this book. It was more like, give me your feedback on this. That took forever. Like my buddy Chris Hill helped write the introduction to this book, and he told me he was going to read the whole thing and help give some feedback. It never did. I think he has now. But like, it's really hard to ask your friends to read 60,000 words, especially when it hasn't gone through like a real editor. Because real editors, the first time you get that back, this book was the color of the cover in here, just like, and that took several $1,000s and 45 days. But then it's waiting on other people being like, hey, what is your feedback? What's missing? What do you think? And then they give you feedback, and then you're like, oh, that is true, that is missing, because you're only looking at it through your eyes. And then they give you the feedback, and you're like, oh, this doesn't make sense. And you're like, ugh. Then you have to go back and write more, and you're like, oh, I want to be done. And then you get done, and then you publish it, and you're like, oh my God, there's 12 edits that need to be in here because there's issues, which have now been fixed. But it's really not that hard. It's just write. You go to school, that sucks, right? You got to go through this class. If you spend 90 days or 90 minutes doing that, you'll probably get a couple thousand words out, right? Get everything out there. And then at the end of it, you let someone else look at it, give their feedback. You give your feedback to that, and you probably have a lot of it done. Are you going to write a book? November's a great month to write a book. There's this thing called NaNoWriMo or something like that, where you're supposed to write like 1,000 words a day for 30 days or 2,000 words a day. That's probably when I'll write book 2.
You said that a word is called
Scrivener, right?
That's like an app?
It is a word processor that is downloadable on your computer, and it is relatively inexpensive. It is a terrible editor, though. So it is really good. So the problem with Google Docs is when you start getting a lot of words, it's very difficult to keep scrolling through and finding your spot. So imagine a tool that just had each chapter that you could click on and go through and go immediately to it. Their editor portion of it is just garbage. But for the $100 or less for it, it's good for that. Then you would export to Word. Then your publisher will take care of the rest, or your editor, whatever.
So you didn't use like Grammarly or something like that?
I don't think Grammarly works with that. And if you like read message boards, they'll all tell you that this is what that tool is for. And I'm cheap, so I don't have Microsoft Word, so I wanted to have the 30-day Microsoft Word thing, and I don't know, whatever.
It's kind of a broad question. Building a personal network,
Yes,
do you think that's crucial before launching a product?
I think
Of any sort?
I think it's crucial in your life.
Yeah. But what platform would you say?
Anywhere that you can have one-on-one relationships with people is the most important thing. I would stop looking at a personal network and a brand as this thing that I post on the internet, and it's a place where I can meet people on the internet, but have one-on-one conversations with them. So whether that's on Twitter DMs, text messages with people, actual phone calls and one-on-one meetings with people, Facebook Messenger, whatever, it's the whole Michael Phelps thing. It's what you do in the dark that puts you in the light. It's what no one else can see that's really, really important.
And keeping it specific to what brand you're trying to build.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but the key in there is to have a relationship with those people that can, at some point, you can call in a favor. And then the stuff that you do post from a content perspective should be on brand with what you do. And the second that you do something different, you need to stop doing that other thing. Right? So my good friend Eric Olson has a lot of personas over the years. And now he's this new persona. And he's like, I have all these things that people know me for, but I want them to know me for this one. You like have to announce it to the world, this is who I am, this is what I do. Because if you think that it's Zack Miller, the swim coach from high school, that's the wrong Zack Miller to be thinking about. I need them to think about Zack Miller, Anomaly guy. And so everything needs to be on brand with that. Or with like book number 2, we need to start feeding people towards that persona, if you will, if it's not on the same as this. But it'll be loosely affiliated. Does it make sense?
Any other questions?
Who wants a book? I have 4. Ooh,
So they still can be purchased online?
yes.
I think we bought 5 for the.
We have 4 left. Okay, you had your hand up first. She hasn't put her
I
hand
would
up.
make him do rock, paper, scissors.
Oh, God.
Push-up challenge. He's like, I'm in. How else do we want to do this?
Make them use their back knee as to why
Yeah.
they need to be.
Let's do
learn
please.
How to be an anomaly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
30 seconds.
do something. How do you spell my, okay, how about this? How do you spell my name?
Oh.
You're wrong, so you're not getting the book. What was your question?
Oh, I was going to ask, so I've seen like successful products being brought through Kickstarter, like you said, the swim clocks and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Does that translate over with bringing a service to market?
I don't know. So I think it can. I think when you look at crowdfunding, a lot of stuff is more product based. But I believe that maybe the most important thing with crowdfunding these days is the marketing aspect of it and using that as kind of a marketing plan. And so if you could figure out something to productize as a service, I think that could be good. It's what service, is there a service that you can think of directly that you're thinking of?
In my head, I was just wondering because when I think of like a successful Kickstarter, I think of like finding like a video game or
Yep.
like a book or something that's like physical and you can get something from it.
Yeah, I mean, I look at crowdfunding as a way for you to get your super fans, your champions, to pay you early on and to validate that thing. Whether or not that is a service, a food, a product, a game, whatever, I think that you could sell a service on there. It's just, do you have the right people? And again, where I think 10 years ago, you see these products that just jump up because it's Kickstarter and that's cool, I don't think you see that the same way anymore, right? I think that can be a big challenge. I think you could sell a service on there, but I do think that there are types of stuff on there. And honestly, there might be some rules that Kickstarter might not even allow you to do some of that stuff. I know some of the platforms don't allow specific stuff. Do you have a piggyback off that?
No, I just think that it seems like for the majority of us, or at least for me specifically, it seems like the biggest issue is going to be list creation or building a list more so than utilizing Kickstarter. Because my business is meant to be, it's a small produce company. So there's, like, aside from trying to establish myself as a subject matter expert through a product, I can only think of, because it'd be so hyper-local, I can only think of a couple ways in which I personally can use Kickstarter. It's more about, I feel, me building a list at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is an incredibly important thing in that. There are other avenues of people that you could probably try to get to be your champions in there, like local advocates.
People who are already.
Well, I would think of like
the natural homeopathic.
that type. So if you have a super hyper local thing, you have to think about, okay, that market is only going to buy from that super hyper local thing. So then who are people that love that thing? Is there a school in there? Is there a business association? Are there the night owl clubs? You know, all those type of things. You have to try and win them. The restaurants, if there are. It can be very difficult. But maybe that's why you don't use a tool like this. I mean, there's definitely a way to gamify this.
You're gonna grow your network a lot quicker than an online presence that is.
Well, especially if it's capped in something like that, right? Unless
Physical, my understanding is it being a physical product is harder, or it's more difficult, or I just don't understand how to properly build a list off that when in my mind the product, or what really pushes the business is me saying, hey, look at this, and then that's what I'm selling. It's not so much that I'm offering a service, or I can make it as fancy as I want, but it still comes down to whether the product's good or not, and that's something you just have to have in somebody's hands. But
yeah, so
that's my deal.
you've been to Costco or to a shopping mall, and you got the little person handing you out a piece of General Tso's chicken, and then you buy it. You know, sometimes eating it at a vendor place makes it a lot easier to sell. Yeah, but those don't. Those could become bigger businesses, but they have to do that little thing first to sell that. You know, you see a lot of food trucks potentially become restaurants, and sometimes they don't do as well because people like the food truck aspect of it, right? And so I would just be very. If I were you, I'd focus. Who do I think that customer is? Solidify that they're my customer, and see if they'll buy my thing. And if some people I think use crowdfunding just because it's a payment processor and it's the easiest way for them to get something through there. They're willing to take the 8 to 10% loss in payment processing because it's easier for them to figure that out than it is for them to figure out WooCommerce, if you will, right? Things are definitely a lot easier than 10 years ago. I mean, things were really difficult to get products online then. Right? And so maybe that's the way you do this. Also, it could be a way for you to call in some family and friends that might be willing to put money on something like this. Hey, I have this 30-day promo. We're trying to win this thing. When you might not be able to get that money otherwise because they're not really into it.
That's super interesting.
Yeah. Yes.
The time cost. So for all this that you did, it's successful. Do you think your time cost benefit was worthwhile?
Yeah, I mean, I look at things as a very long-term goal. And so I'm not trying to win today. I'm not trying to win on this. I'm trying to be the GOAT, right? And so this was one piece of an equation that needed to be there. This whole book thing cost me way more money than I originally anticipated, right? I mean, the actual production of the book, the staffing of the book, the recording of the audio, the production of the videos on there, the editors, the time that I haven't talked about yet, and all those things, and we're sitting, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. That's a lot of coin to invest in something potentially to be there, So yes, I think it's absolutely worth it because I'm trying to build a brand that is going to be this thing that's remembered for a long time. So I think these are little things, little nuggets in there that you take the risk and be in there. I don't worry about the time on something like this the same way that I think other people do, because I would make sure that my time isn't being used or abused by other things that I know are wasteful, right? So with it, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would like to be chiseled out at Mount Rushmore.
Awesome. Let's clap it up for Zack. Thank you guys for coming.